The next few poses will be done in a standing position. Please move slowly and at your own pace. Keep the sturdy chair nearby for balance if needed. If you find that I'm talking faster than you are moving, please take your time and do fewer repetitions. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale. Place the feet about hips width apart and grounded on the floor. Lift the toes and spread them nice and wide and feel the navel pull gently in towards the spine. Push the toes into the floor and lean forward just a little bit. Feel the muscles that keep you steady. Lean back just a little bit and feel the toes come up. Feel the muscles that keep you steady in this position. Now push all four corners of the feet into the floor. Notice the steadiness of mountain pose. Notice how the steadiness of mountain pose feels. On the next inhale, roll the shoulders towards the ears, back and down so the shoulders are slightly open. Let the palms rest open to the side. Inhale and let the arms rise with the palms facing up. Exhale, bend at the elbows and allow the hands to come down the center line. Sink into the knees just a little. Repeat this again. Inhale, lift the arms with the palms facing up. Allow the hands and face to be relaxed. Continue with this movement at your own pace. Breathe as you move and try to coordinate the breath with the movement. On the next breath, lift the arms back over the head. Fingertips point in, palms face up. Imagine that you have candles in the palms of your hands and you do not want to spill them. Turn the fingertips so they face behind you. The palms remain up. Turn the fingertips to the side and then to the front like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again, towards one another, and then forwards like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again. Let's do this rotation one more time. After the second rotation, allow the hands to cascade down by the side and let them rest. Pause for one slow inhale and exhale. One more breath. Inhale, exhale. This next exercise is excellent for strengthening the spine and gently stretching the muscles of the back, front, and sides. Attempt to make the movement easeful and gentle. We will do these movements with various arm positions. The first arm position is the easiest. Please be sure to stay with the one that feels best for your body. We will demonstrate them all. Take the right hand to the waist, and then the left. Roll the shoulders open. And on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale to the center. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale back to the center. Roll the shoulders up, back, and down. And on the next inhale, gently pull the navel towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin and feel a sense of lengthening through the front of the body. On the next exhale, begin to fold gently forward. It does not have to be all the way. Bend the knees slightly. Inhale and rise back to a standing position. Open the left arm to the side. Keep the elbow bent. Leave the right hand on the waist. Inhale. Exhale, lean slightly to the right, and then return back to the center. Bring the left hand down to the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. Exhale and lengthen to the left. Return to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Gently pull the navel in towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward halfway. Inhale back to standing. Open the left arm again. Inhale, and on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale and return back to the center. Place the left hand on the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale and return back to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Lengthen through the front of the body. Slightly pull the shoulder blades together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward. Knees slightly bent. Inhale and return to standing in mountain pose. Pause for a moment. Inhale and exhale. For this warrior sequence, attempt to keep the movements gentle and relaxed. If you notice that you are struggling, move the feet closer together. Lower the arms or make the movements smaller. This pose is great for strengthening the legs, respiration, and opening the shoulders. Step the left foot forward just a few feet. The back foot points in at a 45-degree angle. The front knee bends and the hips face front if possible. Inhale, open the arms and bend at the elbows. On the exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards each other. Inhale, open the arms and push the heart softly forwards. Relax the shoulders. Exhale, bring the arms together. Inhale, open the arms to where you feel comfortable. Exhale, relax the arms inwards. Inhale, open and expand. Exhale, contract. Inhale, exhale. Bring the hands back down by the side, return to mountain pose. One breath here. Inhale, exhale. Step the right foot forward. Take a moment, there's no rush. Ground the back foot into the floor. Bend the front knee. When you are ready, open the arms. Inhale. Exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards one another. Inhale, open the arms. This is a relaxed opening in the chest. Exhale, bring the hands and arms towards one another. Inhale, repeat again, creating spaciousness with a full inhale. Exhale, contract and relax the arms slightly. 2 more times at your own pace. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Let the hands rest down by the side and return back to mountain pose. Pause here for a few breaths.
Welcome back to the 48th online episode of Peacetime, hosted every Sunday morning by Peace Point with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from our meditation center in London. Last time you saw me, we looked at blessing number 6, setting oneself up properly in life. The Dhamma talk today, we will continue our series on enlightened living with blessing number 7, artfulness in knowledge. So today's session will run to about an hour and 10 minutes, starting with a 25-minute talk to distinguish between learning and wisdom, then 20 minutes of meditation, and 25 minutes to explain how student life can be considered a blessing. The 7th blessing marks the start of the 3rd group of blessings of life, a group that is often referred to as making yourself useful. This doesn't just refer to making oneself a citizen who can give back something positive to society. It means being able to be of independent means, to earn one's own living without having to rely on outsiders for help. The principle of self-sufficiency is very important for Buddhism, not just being a refuge to oneself in spiritual ways, but also referring to standing on one's own 2 feet in worldly life as well. Not being a burden on others in society is seen not only as bolstering self-respect, but also as the foundation of higher spiritual attainments. Earning one's living requires both knowledge and skills, found in this and the next blessing, but as usual, it's not acceptable to earn one's living in an unscrupulous way, to the detriment of others, in other words. Society-friendly application of our knowledge and skills in action and word is elaborated respectively in blessings 9 and 10 to make sure we don't make ourselves self-sufficient at society's expense. Freedom from worry concerning our daily bread will serve as a foundation for a harmonious family life and public works that we will find in subsequent groups of blessings. The 3rd group of blessings starts with learnedness or artfulness in knowledge this session, and then we'll move on to application of knowledge or craftsmanship, practicing self-discipline, and being skillful in speech in subsequent blessings. The blessings we have studied up to this point have concerned protecting our mind from damage and availing ourselves from discretion to tell the difference between right and wrong. In the previous blessing, we've already set our sights on aim in life that we require. And now in the 3rd grouping, we start to move in the direction of the goal we have set for ourselves. So today's session will be about learning and study skills and how these can be harnessed to constitute a blessing in life. Most people assume going to school or college to be a positive and necessary part of life. But in recent years, the importance of education has been eroded continuously. In recent years, the social status of the teaching profession, both in the UK and the US, has taken a nosedive. And it would appear that in these countries, any old Tom, Dick, or Harry in a political position considers themselves better qualified to dictate educational policy than teachers or those with a specialist training in education. Schools have become like a pipeline to teach people merely to quote a book title by Noah Cicero, to go to work, do their job, care for their children, pay their bills, obey the law, and buy products. In other words, schools are only there to provide crowd control for youngsters. Attacks on the value of any education the schools might actually provide come in the form of 7 different myths, supposedly backed by research. But if you scratch away at the veneer of disinformation, it reveals that they are really cherry-picking by the purveyors of fake news. The first myth is that facts prevent understanding. So this is the idea that teaching something like history by memorizing the dates of important historical events somehow gets in the way of pupils understanding the more profound historical trends in play. It is said to be a myth because higher order conceptual responses to any situation depends on having a foundation of correct information in one's long-term memory. A second myth is that teacher-led instruction is passive, as if merely being questioned by a teacher does not stretch the abilities of pupils, or as if they were better just to let the students learn about what they are already interested in. However, it's unlikely that children would learn alphabetic or numeric systems without guidance. Although discovery learning has its place, even a high-profile personality who was a complete loser at school, namely Sir Winston Churchill, managed to turn his academic performance around by a high degree of rote learning, particularly in grammar, which led ultimately to one of his most important life's achievements, which was motivating others through powerful speeches. A third myth is that the 21st century fundamentally changes everything, namely that we have technologies such as the internet for remembering all the petty details of our lives, so there's no point in going to school to memorize these details anymore. Others argue that by the time the school curricula have been updated to reflect the latest technological advances, the curricula themselves are already out of date. Nonetheless, civilization is the accumulation of a capital of experience and knowledge that has gone before. And an overview of history will show that the newer the idea, the more likely it is to go out of fashion more quickly. So that a lot of so-called new ideas are in fact just thoroughly discredited old ideas that have been warmed over. Many of the things that they were thinking of teaching in school, like WordPerfect or programming in BASIC, have already gone obsolete, whereas the alphabet and the numerical system remain relatively unchanged. A fourth myth is that if you don't know something, you can always just look it up. Some say that educated people are not those who know everything, but those who know where to look up information at a moment's notice. It is true that with the internet, the type of research that would have taken 15 years before can be undertaken these days in only a few days of trawling through the internet. But the skills that underlie the ability to research accurately, even from data copiously available on the internet, are not something you can acquire accidentally, which is a reason why memes and misinformation have such a wide uptake in popular opinion these days. You could say that it is a failure where authentic education should have managed to guard students against their own blind spots. The fifth myth is that we should teach transferable skills rather than classical or theoretical knowledge. Unfortunately, though, knowledge and skills are intertwined. Some argue that with the electronic calculator, there was no need to teach arithmetic anymore. But what if you press the 0 on your calculator one time too many? If you have no knowledge of arithmetic, then you would never notice that your answer is out by an order of magnitude. The same principle applies to understanding the nuances of complex sentences. Without theoretical understanding learned in school, we will be constantly reliant on having the truth dumbed down for us at every turn. The sixth myth is that projects and activities are the best way to learn. Many schools aspire to have their pupils think like experts, but the difference between a novice and an expert is that the experts have a huge body of background knowledge and processes stored in their long-term memory that allows them to make qualitative as well as quantitative judgments. Copying experts without the background knowledge will just end up producing behaviors like the cargo cults of the South Seas, who thought that building runways would attract airplanes to come out of the sky and land on their island. A final myth is that teaching any knowledge is indoctrination by the educator's viewpoint, so education is perceived as a politically biased act, as if educators are curating and defining what they consider worth learning. Why should a pupil need to know anything external to them which they cannot experience for themselves? The reason is that apart from getting knowledge, it is hoped that a student needs to develop imagination, wider sympathies with other people, a love of beauty, and personal qualities like confidence. Without the school system, it's hard to know how young people can be taken outside their own comfort zone to learn new perspectives or perspectives of people who are not like them. Therefore, you can see that although schools teach only mundane knowledge and not spiritual knowledge, becoming learned is a blessing for the individual and society, and one that we should trivialize only at our peril. The title used for this blessing in the Pali language is the word Bahusutta, which literally means one who has heard much. It refers to being learned by having heard much, both in spiritual and worldly ways. A Bahusutta is someone who is artful in knowledge, choosing to study only the things appropriate for study, being a person learned in those subjects and observant, a personal quality that lies at the trailhead of the pathway towards real wisdom. Such knowledge allows one to be independent in earning one's living and will be the key which unlocks the door to worldly success. If we want to identify the features of learning that will give rise to wisdom, we have to distinguish wisdom from other sorts of knowledge. All sorts of knowledge illuminate the mind to a certain extent. When we don't understand something, it's as if we are left in the dark about that thing. When we understand something, it's as if light has been thrown on that matter. Knowledge in its most basic form, like the ability to do arithmetic or knowing where to catch the bus, sometimes will feel as if it creates some illumination in the mind, but it's just a feeling. Because such an ability to produce such brightness in the mind is restricted really only to the higher sort of wisdom known as wisdom or insight knowledge. In all, we can differentiate 3 different levels of knowledge, and I'll describe each in turn. The first and most basic level of knowledge is called theoretical knowledge, or sutta maya panya. If you are ungenerous, you might refer to it as parrot learning or learning by rote. It's referred to as basic knowledge because it arises via the 5 senses, that is, through the things we can see with our eyes, hear with our ears, smell with our nose, taste with our tongue, or feel by our scent of touch. It is the equivalent of raw data. It's this sort of knowledge that also includes knowledge we receive by listening to information such as lectures or reading from textbooks. If you never had the chance to apply the knowledge that you've learned, then it might still be of limited use. Only by touching a fire can we know the real meaning of the word hot. A parent might tell a child not to touch a fire because it will burn them. But such knowledge will not manage to quench the child's curiosity, and they will still want to touch the flame to learn more, because the parent's advice is only theoretical. The second most basic form of knowledge is known as Hanso Knowledge, or Jinta Maya Panya. It is the sort of knowledge that has been reflected on, tested, and applied. However, even if you are the world's leading authority on a subject, your knowledge will not exceed this level. With this sort of knowledge, you are like someone standing on the water's edge who sees ripples on the surface of the water. From knowledge or experience, you would be able to deduce that the ripples are caused by fish under the water. Whether they are large or small, or whether they are fish or shellfish, you could probably notice from the size of the ripples. But because you cannot see the fish directly, you're only able to make an educated guess. A third and highest level of knowledge, known as insight knowledge or Bhavana Manya Panya, refers to insight into deeper or more challenging truths. Insight knowledge allows a meditator to find solutions to problems through the power of illumination by a mind free of thought. The characteristics of wisdom that distinguish it from mere theoretical or hands-on knowledge are twofold. Firstly, insight knowledge gives rise to brightness in the mind. Wisdom is the light which dispels the darkness of ignorance. This is not just a metaphor for the knowledge, but when we train ourselves in meditation, we'll see that brightness really is the operant feature of wisdom. The illumination of advanced insight knowledge is so bright that it's like compressing the brightness of 100 suns into a single spot. It is by virtue of such brightness that meditation adepts can identify and uproot defilements usually hidden in the mind. For those who are new to meditation, the brightness will not yet be continuous and remains dim like a glowworm. Such brightness is not yet sufficient to identify defilements, but it is a good start. The second characteristic of insight knowledge is that it allows the practitioner to transcend defilements. When wisdom arises, it allows us to transcend defilements previously active in the mind. Problems which used to exist will be overcome once and for all. Unwholesomeness in the mind is uprooted. It allows us to probe deeper into problems and cut them off at their roots. It allows us to overcome our own faults and weaknesses and change our bad habits. Such knowledge allows us to truly overcome suffering, since such knowledge can actually kill negativity in the mind once and for all. Such knowledge no longer comes via the five senses, but will come instead directly via the mind that is free from thought. It is not knowledge that comes from thinking, but it is knowledge that arises in a still mind together with brightness. If we were to revisit the metaphor of the person standing on the water's edge, who through conventional knowledge could do no better than make an educated guess about the ripples on the surface of the water, if insight were used to assess this same situation, it would be as if the water was rendered clear and the fish could be seen directly without having to make any assumptions. The ability to harness the knowledge that arises from the still mind is an ability that can only come from training in meditation. Just as there are differences between academic and meditational knowledge, there are also differences in the nature of the bearers of the knowledge, namely those who are learned versus those who are truly wise. Where the learned may have much knowledge but not much virtue, the wise may not actually know that much, but they do have a lot of virtue. Where the learned may remember a lot of knowledge, they may not apply any of what they know to do good things. By contrast, the wise may not have a particularly good memory for knowledge, but what they remember they will apply in the pursuit of good deeds. Although the learned may be highly educated, it is no guarantee that they will not make a mess of their life. By contrast, although the wise may not be well educated or even literate, but they would not make a mess of their life. If your only knowledge is academic, no matter how clever you might be, there is always a risk of your knowledge being twisted into something dangerous. For example, if you have a knowledge of chemistry, it could produce fertilizers, or it could be used to produce chemical weapons. This is why ethical considerations need to go hand in hand with any academic knowledge, like a guiding light to know what is an appropriate application. Nonetheless, although being learned is inferior to being wise, at this point in our staircase of the blessings, we are trying to emphasize that being learned is a major blessing compared with being unlearned. And this is the main message of the seventh blessing. So before we come to time for some meditation today, I would like to tell a scriptural story that illustrates the blessings coming out of a respect for learning. While the Buddha was pursuing perfections as the Bodhisattva, he was born as Prince Sutasoma, who ruled over the Kuru kingdom of ancient India. Although at that time in history, Buddhism was no longer actively practiced, the prince was so keen to learn any remnants of the teaching of the previous Buddha, called Kassapa, that he would invite anyone who had knowledge of the Dharma to come and teach him at the palace. It was rare to find anyone with such knowledge, and even rewarded with a heap of gold or diamonds. Sometimes it was impossible to find anyone capable to give a Dhamma teaching anymore. On one occasion, Prince Sutasoma had managed to track down someone able to give such a Dhamma teaching, and he was on his way to listen to hear that recitation. Unfortunately, on the way, he was ambushed by his enemies and was threatened with his life. Having his life hanging in the balance only highlighted for the prince the preciousness of the opportunity to learn the Dharma, and he realized it may be the last thing he managed to do before he died. With the invitation to the Dharma teacher already made, the prince made a deal with the captors that they could do with him as they wished, but they should first let him hear the teaching of the Dharma as his final request. Even though his captors didn't know about the precepts, they still knew about the importance of keeping their word. The prince was allowed to return to the palace where the Dhamma teacher was waiting. The teacher didn't even know how to elaborate on the Dharma. All he could do was recite the scripture from his notes. But in order to show full respect for the teaching, the teacher rinsed his hands with perfumed water before handling the scriptures. He bowed 3 times to the scriptures, and only then did he open them with great care. The subject matter of the scriptures were the words of Kassapa Buddha. Although the teacher could recite the words and translate them, he didn't know the meaning. The teaching went as follows. Associating with the noble ones just once, one can be protected for the rest of one's life. However, associating with fools, even many times, will fail to protect you. If you associate with the noble ones, you should associate with them closely, because anyone learning the virtues of a noble will know only prosperity and never know decay. Even a beautifully decorated royal chariot must eventually deteriorate and decay. In the same way, this body of ours must eventually age and die. However, virtue never goes out of date, because the noble ones know nirvana. Just as the earth and sky are far apart are the 2 sides of the ocean, but all of these are not so far apart as the behavior of nobles as compared to fools. Before putting the scriptures away, the teacher bowed to them again. Hearing just these teachings, the prince was so moved that he cried tears of joy. The prince asked the teacher, "Usually when you read this scripture to other kings, how much do they pay you for your services?" The teacher replied, "They give me 100 for each verse." "These verses are not 100 a verse, but are 1,000 a verse," declared the prince, and presented the teacher with 4,000. The prince then remembered the appointment he had made with his captors, and thought to himself, "If I were to break my promise, it would only make my mind dull and guilty, and I would certainly have an unfortunate afterlife destination. Better that I go to my death with these guards, while my mind is still radiant from having heard the Dharma." The prince gave himself up to his captors, and the captors were surprised that the prince didn't show any fear of death. They asked him why he was not afraid. When the prince told them it was because of the Dharma he had just learned, the captors asked him to repeat the teaching. Having heard the teaching, the captors were so impressed that they asked the prince to accept them as his students and revered him instead of imprisoning him. So we can see that from this story that the power of learning spiritual knowledge to the degree that one is prepared to lay down one's life has the power to turn around one's destiny into a life of blessings. So now that we know the importance of knowledge for our spiritual destiny, especially the importance of inner brightness, of insight knowledge, before we go any further, let's take the opportunity to cultivate that inner wisdom by settling ourselves for 20 minutes of meditation, which today is entitled The Benefits of Meditation in the Here and Now. So at this point in time, if you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now, as you listen to my guidance. So start by finding a comfortable position for yourself in the meditation. Find a position by which you feel you could sit for a long, long time without having to move around too much. Your posture should be as comfortable as possible, resting either on a cushion, a pillow, or maybe sitting on a straight-backed chair. If you're sitting cross-legged, then you may be able to bring your knees to the floor ideally. If not, then support your knees with blankets or towels so that you get a good, stable, tripod-like posture to be able to sit for your meditation without having to move around too much. And in this way, you can bring your spine up nice and tall to fill your spine with energy. At the same time, you can let your lower lumbar region relax to its natural shape. Allow your hands to rest palm upwards in your lap. With the right hand over the left hand, the index finger of the right hand touching against the thumb of the left hand. The way you close your eyes should be as gentle as possible. Or if you prefer, you can cast your gaze softly at the floor in front of you, allowing your eyes to defocus. And invite a sense of softness to the face. Feel the folds in the skin of the forehead relax. Feel the space between the eyebrows soften. And make sure your eyelids are as relaxed as possible. If you observe carefully, you'll notice that even your eyeballs can relax. And allow that sense of softness to flow down through your temples in a gentle wave. Your lips touch only lightly together as the mouth relaxes. The tongue softens within the mouth. Also, the jawline softens. We relax our neck and throat, finding softness in their length and openness. We let our shoulders relax away from our ears and let the elbows rest at the sides of the body. And you can also let your belly soften. Also relax your legs all the way down to your feet and your toes, so that your whole body feels light in weight, almost as if it has disappeared into the atmosphere around you. Turning your attention inward, you can let your attention gently peel away from the outside world. In the same way, you can relax your state of mind, putting aside any worries or concerns in your life, as if you were alone in the world, a person with no past and no future, entirely focused in the present moment and on the task in hand. Conjuring up a sense of well-being within yourself, as if well-being were made up of tiny particles inside yourself, particles of happiness and joy that grow and spread inside you to fill the whole of your body and mind, leaving no space inside yourself for any other sort of thought. And when we feel relaxed both in body and in mind, very gently, using no effort at all, we imagine our whole body to be nothing but an empty space or a hollow cavity, with no organs or tissues, muscles or bones. Or instead you may imagine your body to have been transformed into a sort of transparent bubble with nothing on the inside. And when you're ready, again, very gently, using no effort at all, remember back to that picture of the bright shining sun or full moon that you had a few moments ago. Maybe yellow or gold in color, white or red. It doesn't matter if the actual picture is not as clear as you normally see it with your eyes. Even if it's vague, accept it anyway. And there may be some people who feel the warmth of the sun but don't actually see it. Again, you can use that tactile sense of warmth as an object for your meditation. And in this case, we allow that bright picture or that feeling of warmth to make its way gently downwards inside the space of our body, almost as if we were gradually breathing it down to the deepest point of our breath, or gently swallowing the object down to the very pit of our stomach. And once the bright object or the sense of warmth reaches that point in our abdomen, there's no need for us to move it anywhere else anymore. We maintain it gently with a feather-light touch at the very center of ourselves. If we find our awareness wandering away onto other things, like the sounds around us, distractions around us, each time we realize, we just bring our attention back to the center of our body as before. If the inner object disappears, we can conjure up a new one. It's not a big deal. And when we're new to meditation, we'll find that our mind wanders often. But each time we bring it back, it will become a little bit easier to keep it in place the next time round. Until before long, we'll find that our awareness is spending more time centered than it is wandering. At which point we'll start to have an intuitive feeling of the mind being able to stay at the center almost by second nature. And to help to create a space between yourself and your thoughts, we tap into that still, silent space. If thoughts return, we do our best to ignore them. But if ignoring the thoughts proves ineffective, we can make use of our traditional mantra, hearing the sound of the words Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, coming up as if the source of the sound is at the center of our body. And the more you say the mantra, the more power you give to the words of the mantra. And they will start to lead the mind deeper towards a sense of purity in the mind. So feel these words resonating within your heart, within every cell, every fiber of your being, with every repetition of the mantra. With meditation, as with exercise, practice makes perfect. But we don't just exercise for exercise's sake. We exercise for the benefits of strength and health in our everyday lives. In the same way, we meditate not just for meditation's sake, but to impact our everyday lives in a positive way. Although there are long-term esoteric conceptual goals of awakening, of nirvana, of enlightenment, these can be regarded as distant goals that you can head towards while, for the interim, focusing on the benefits to you in the here and now in your life. So what are the benefits of meditation in the here and now? Perhaps benefits that are also supported by scientific research. It can be asserted that there is no other single intervention done each day that matches the benefits to our lives of bringing the mind to the center of the body in meditation. Our daily activities never influence our well-being independent of one another. But obviously, besides keeping healthy, exercising daily, eating well, keeping up therapy, keeping a journal, or other forms of self-care, if you were to do just one thing for yourself, the most important single contribution to your well-being would be meditation at the center of the body. What meditation at the center of the body does is that it gives you the skills to detach. It allows you to see reality as it is, for what it is. It gives you the power to stand back from your thoughts as they arise and not get trapped by them. Without meditation, it's like going through life half asleep, for want of a better expression, going through life leapfrogging from one distraction to the next. If a thought or emotion or a mood pops up and we get trapped by it, then we just react. We get angry, we get jealous, we feel attraction, or we say and do something that we may later regret. We may feel afraid, we may feel depressed, we may feel fearful of the future. At times when we're in this sort of reactive mindset, we just react based on the thoughts that we've been trapped by. And when we're trapped in those thoughts, then it's very hard to know what to do, because they become our reality. But there is an antidote, and the antidote is meditation. Bringing our focus back within the space of our body. The mind wanders, and acknowledging that, but gently and calmly turning our focus back to the center of the body. Little by little, we'll start to gain control of our mind and start to get independence from the way our thoughts affect us. And if we practice it regularly, every day, until bringing our mind to the center of the body becomes like second nature to us, then there will be many benefits that come to us from this practice, apart from simply taking back control of our mind from our thoughts. And the benefits of meditation are so widely recognized that currently the majority of medical professionals give their backing to meditation. In Britain, more than 2/3 of general practitioners agreed that it would be helpful for their patients to learn meditation techniques, even for those without any health problems. And that more doctors don't recommend meditation to their patients is really only limited by the knowledge of and access to appropriate meditation resources. It's been found that meditation can change the shape of one's brain, with Canadian researchers finding that in meditators the areas of the brain which regulate pain and emotion were significantly thicker as compared to those who didn't meditate, meaning that sensitivity to pain is lowered in meditators. And this potential for change, known as neuroplasticity, means that when you sit to meditate, you're not only changing your perspective, which are actually changing the physical structure of the brain. Apart from raising the pain threshold, meditation is also known to reduce negativity in the mind more generally, because meditation reduces the intensity of toxic emotions. Neuroscientists recently discovered that people who meditate experience negative emotions less intensely than those who do not. And even the simple practice of labeling the emotions allows us to detach in a good way, giving us the chance to step back from negativity. We become more able to choose the thoughts that we want to listen to. And if we are in the moment, in our everyday life, if something happens, for example, to make us angry, rather than just instantly responding, we're able to take a little breath, a mindful moment, and take a different decision instead. And being able to have control in this way has benefits in every aspect of our lives. With the decisions about our diet, consumption of intoxicants, relationships, friends, family, work ethic, or exercise regime. We become less attached to the thoughts that just pop up randomly. And we're able to overcome moments of low motivation or boredom. Instead of listening to the thoughts that say we can't be bothered. Instead of accepting those thoughts as our reality, we realize that our reality is that we're just observing those thoughts, and those thoughts are not us. So rather than just acquiescing, we push through and do the exercise. Push through and clean the house. Push through to study or start the business. We're able to engage in more challenging conversations with our loved ones and close friends, enabling us to understand them better on a deeper level. And we'll be able to tell the difference between the things that we want and the things that are imposed on us. And it all comes back to a dedicated meditation practice. It all comes back to returning our focus to the center of the body repeatedly until we gain full control of our mental state. Meditation is also known to unwind the harmful effects of stress, as can be seen with blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and even heart disease. It boosts the immune system by what's known as the relaxation response. It's been shown to reduce anxiety. Even after 2 months of meditation, 90% of those with generalized anxiety disorder were able to reduce their anxiety and depression. And this effect continued for up to 3 years after their initial trial. That anxiety and depression are reduced by meditation has been verified by a whole raft of different studies, which show the far-reaching effect on the symptoms across a wide range of health disorders. Even if your stress levels are not affecting your health, meditation improves performance under stress, helping to offset the loss of mental performance in stressful situations, and maintaining peak performance, whether it be for first responders, relief workers, trauma surgeons, or even professional athletes. Meditation helps people meet deadlines, with researchers finding that practitioners showed significant improvements in their cognitive skills, even after only 4 days of meditation training, doing particularly well on physical and mental tasks requiring sustained attention, even under time constraints. And for those suffering from sleeplessness, meditation can reduce the time it takes to get to sleep. Meditation has been incorporated as an integral component of treatment for insomnia, allowing sufferers to reduce their reliance on medication and halving the average time spent getting to sleep. It is known that apart from reducing negativity in the mind, meditation boosts all the positive aspects of our mind as well, activating the parts of the brain related to happiness, the parts of the brain associated with resilience and optimism, which become more active even in those who have only meditated for 2 months, with the corresponding increased feelings of happiness and well-being within ourselves. Meditation is known to enhance the quality of life by preventing relapse into depression, and the enhanced quality of life is much better than those who rely on medication to get the same effects. Not only does the enhanced quality of life affect the people who meditate, but even those around them seem to benefit as well, almost as if meditation were a form of social good, or a form of altruism in a sense. You can imagine what the world would be like if everyone could take a deep breath, calm down and just detach a bit from their innate biases, from their moods and stresses, anxiety and anger, rather than just reacting, saying or doing something in the wake of heightened emotionality. Imagine how good the world would be if we could just be a little bit more detached, a little bit more aware of how our mental states impact the words and actions in our lives. And it's also not a myth that meditation can help make a person's complexion more radiant. Meditation has been shown to clear treatable skin conditions related to psychological stress. Conditions like psoriasis, meditators' skin cleared 4 times more quickly than expected. And meditation is also related to self-control. Even after just a few days of meditation, there is increased blood flow to the parts of the brain involved with control of emotions and behavior, which is why the practice of meditation, even for short periods of time, has become an essential part of rehabilitation from disorders of various sorts, concerning intoxicants or smoking or binge eating. It's been shown that meditation helps keep a person bright and alert, since the reduction of grey matter normally associated with aging has been found to be offset by meditation, with significantly better accuracy and speed of response amongst meditators than normally would be expected for a person of their age. So for all the benefits I've described today, although a mere fraction of benefits seen in the here and now, they are all substantial reasons to try to bring some meditation into your daily life. It may be the most important single intervention that you've ever made in your life. So for now we continue to cultivate our mind on track at the center of our body, bringing our mind back from any untoward thoughts or emotions by means of our mantra, as we make good wishes for ourselves and others on the basis of the meditation and the brightness both inside and out that we have cultivated today. Sapa Buddhanupavena, Sapa Dhammanupavena, Sapa Sankhanupavena Satha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you would like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before slowly finishing your practice. So to return gently to today's subject matter of becoming learned, how can we acquire knowledge in a way that would ensure blessings in our life? The Buddha taught in the Sigalawada Sutta that successful studies are established on the basis of reciprocal duties that a student practices towards their teacher and a teacher practices towards their student. The duty is collectively referred to as the duties to the southern quarter. The teacher should practice the following 5 duties towards their pupil. Firstly, the teacher needs to make sure that the student is well trained. Secondly, the teacher needs to make sure that the student is well taught in a way that they understand and remember well. Thirdly, the teacher needs to make sure that the student is thoroughly instructed in the lore of every art without holding any knowledge back. Fourthly, the teacher needs to praise the student in a way that raises their esteem amongst their peers. The teacher needs to ensure the student's security and safety in every quarter, which means in relation to their parents, wife, children, employees, friends, and spiritual mentors, while pointing out the loopholes and weaknesses present in any body of knowledge that they're learning. Meanwhile, the student should minister to their teacher firstly by making sure that they rise to receive them, normally when they enter the classroom. Secondly, the pupil should find any opportunity to serve the teacher in any task that might facilitate the teacher's convenience. Thirdly, the student should try to be obedient to what is taught to them by their teacher and generally display an eagerness to learn. Fourthly, the student should look for ways to be of personal assistance to their teacher. Often they give the example of helping the teacher when they have to move house, for example. And lastly, the student should be attentive and respectful in the way they learn the arts and sciences. If a student fails to fulfill their duties but the teacher does their part, the student is unworthy of the teacher, and it will be no surprise if the student never becomes skilled in knowledge. If the student keeps their side of the bargain but the teacher does not, then the teacher is unworthy of the student. Perhaps the student should look elsewhere for a better teacher. If neither the student nor the teacher fulfill their duties, then neither student nor teacher will gain any benefit from the teaching collaboration, and their failing will have negative consequences for society at large. However, if both student and teacher fulfill their duties to one another, both parties will have a bright future, and their collaboration will have positive consequences for society at large. When it comes to learning any new subject, there is a checklist to ensure a student has covered every dimension of the subject they have chosen. Whatever the subject, the student needs to be aware of all 4 aspects of their specialism. Only then can they say that they have mastered that knowledge. Such an assessment of one's knowledge will prevent the student from slipping into the premature overestimation of the amount they know, and will motivate them to keep listening to people who are bringing them knowledge. So the first thing is that they need to make sure they have knowledge in depth. They need to make sure that they understand deeply what they've learned. They need to know the roots and origins of everything they study. In other words, the past of dimension of the knowledge they're learning. If they are a doctor and they see a patient, then the illness has certain symptoms, and if they are a good doctor with mastery of medical knowledge, then they will immediately be able to tell the prognosis of their illness right from 10 or 20 years in that patient's past. So don't go believing things simply because they're traditional or customary without understanding the reasons for the origins of such beliefs. Secondly, They need to make sure they have knowledge in breadth. They need to have a broad knowledge, in other words, about the subject matter in the present day, not only of their own narrow specialism, but also about all the other things that concern that person in their everyday life. If they study the arts, they still need to know how electricity works, because they use electricity in their everyday life from the time they get up in the morning to the time they go to bed. So if they have studied science, by contrast, then they still need to know about the arts. Otherwise, they will not be able to understand how to communicate emotions, feelings, and ideas from one person to another in different forms, whether it be written or visual. If a scientist can't communicate with others, then they will end up being the engineer who ends up digging holes for the rest of their life all on their own, because they can't communicate with anyone else. The third perspective on knowledge that they need to make sure they have is thorough knowledge. Not only does a student need to know about their own narrow subject or specialism, but they need to know the connections which it has with other issues. They need to know about everything where that knowledge they have influences other sorts of knowledge, right from the mainstream up to the very fringes. Lastly, they need to make sure that they have long-sighted knowledge, which means that they have to have a knowledge of how things are likely to turn out in the future as a result of what they know. So it's about knowing about the consequences of the knowledge that you have. Taking knowledge beyond superficial understanding also requires overcoming 7 possible obstacles, which I sometimes refer to as the 7 veils of knowledge. Otherwise, a lack of authenticity might be the reason that students fail in their studies. And this would definitely be true for students who are always leaving their revision until the last moment. Reasons why students are unsuccessful include failure to follow through on the full process of learning. If one is to be authentic in one's learning, it is necessary to follow through the whole process of learning and not to stop short, having completed only some of the stages in the process. Otherwise, the depth of usefulness of the knowledge will be curtailed. So the first thing, or the first veil of knowledge, is that you need to come in contact with someone who is knowledgeable. One of the hardest things is to find a teacher who will give the necessary encouragement to bring one's studies to fruition. Secondly, so the second veil of knowledge is that you need to find the opportunity to hear what that teacher is teaching. If you are still a sort of person who skips lectures and copies the notes later, you are unlikely ever to make a success of your career as a student. Similarly, simply having your selfie taken with a famous teacher does not count as listening to what they teach. This principle applies both to personal contact with the teacher and the way you use textbooks. It often means using the Socratic method of questioning through dialogue. The third veil of knowledge is that you need to listen attentively. If you listen to remember, not just sit in the lecture and pick your fingernails and chat to your friends while hoping to earn participation credits. The fourth thing you need to do is to memorize the appropriate parts of the knowledge that you've learned. This may include times tables for arithmetic or verb tables for a foreign language. If you make no effort to memorize what you've learned, then you can never become a person who has heard much. If the knowledge stays in the books, it's like having money but having lent it all to someone else. If you want it back instantly, even though it is yours, you cannot get it back immediately. Even though you know which textbook you can find a piece of information in, you will need to go reaching for the book, and one day you might find that that particular page has been eaten by termites. The fifth veil of knowledge is that you need to reflect on the knowledge you've memorized. You need to mull over new knowledge in your mind and let it make connections with your previous knowledge. Meditating is one of the most efficient ways of digesting such new knowledge. The penultimate veil of knowledge is that you need to apply the knowledge you've learned for your own benefit. And the last veil is that you need to apply the knowledge you have learned for the benefit both of yourself and of others. And you'll see more about the application of knowledge in the next blessing. For any student to become truly learned, they need to make sure there's an ethical strand to what they learn. Their learnedness needs to go hand in hand with respect for human dignity in themselves, in others, and on a social or economic level. Success in one's studies also relies on choosing only appropriate subjects to study, which will not have negative implications for the human dignity of yourself, others, or society at large. Furthermore, a person who is obsessed with personal financial gain will find it hard to make progress in their studies. Those who see that material rewards are more valuable than wisdom will never get very far in acquiring that knowledge. Of course, a student shouldn't overlook the importance of wealth completely, but the balance is required, and this will be elaborated further in the 15th blessing. Furthermore, you need to dedicate yourself studying your chosen subject to the utmost of your ability, always being enthusiastic to learn about new things. The ethical strand to your learnedness can be ensured by studying spiritual knowledge hand in hand with worldly knowledge. And of course, you should always try to commit the important parts of what you've learned to memory so that it is always at the top of your mind for your immediate use. Some final advice is that students should avoid sentimentality about learning. Those who are not strong-minded in their pursuit of learning will not manage to succeed in becoming learned. Secondly, the student should avoid obsession with appearances. If you want to become learned in the future, you should model yourself on the stereotype of academics or monastics who emphasize only two things about the way they dress, which are modesty and cleanliness. Lastly, the student should avoid childish behavior, because those who play around and never take responsibility for anything and never take anything seriously will never succeed in becoming learned. And as an illustration of the value even of learning academic knowledge, I will finish with a story from the Dhammapada commentary. In the time of the Buddha, there was an elder monk who was so learned in the Dhamma teachings that he had many disciples of his own. Many of his disciples had become arahants as a result of what he had taught them, but as for himself, he had not achieved anything in the terms of mental attainments. He had heard a lot of teachings, but he had never showed any interest in practicing all the theory that he had taught for himself. All he had was knowledge. Out of compassion, the Buddha wanted the elder monk to realize that he must practice for himself. So he constantly referred to that monk as Mr. Blank Scripture or Tucca Potila. If the elder came to see the Buddha, the only thing the Buddha would declare was, "Oh, blank scripture, so you're here again?" and ignore him while giving encouragement to all the other monks. The Buddha ignored the elder completely until everyone else was taking their leave, at which point the Buddha would dismiss him with the words, "Blank scripture, so it's time for you to go." After some time, the elder realized that the Buddha intended something special for him and thought to himself, what the Buddha means must be really true, that I am just a blank scripture, because I know all the scriptures by heart, but have never used any of them to practice for my own benefit. So he thought to himself, I've spent all my life teaching others, but I've never taught anything to the stubbornest person in the world, who is myself. So the blank scripture elder went to the most senior arahant he knew, so an enlightened person, and he asked for his help in learning to practice Buddhism. The arahant knew what the elder monk had in mind, and he also knew that if he made practice too easy for him, then he would never give up on all his arrogance. Consequently, the arahant humiliated the elder by sending him to a more junior arahant, saying, "That monk is still young and healthy. He will have the strength to teach you what you want to know." So the blank scripture elder went to the younger arahant. The younger arahant also discerned the character of the elder. He knew with his seniority the elder would not pay much attention to anything he taught to him, because he was only half his age. Therefore, the young arahant sent the elder to study with a novice, who was barely a child, but he was an arahant. And the elder was tempted to give up his search for knowledge because of the humiliation of being taught by a very young novice. However, the warning of the Buddha still rang in his ears, and he gritted his teeth and went to see the novice. The novice knew the arrogant character of the elder, so he told him not that to get a good result from the teaching, the elder must wade out into a river up to his neck in river water in order to hear the teaching. The elder thought, I must really be on my last chance, so if I don't do what this novice tells me, I might never have the chance to learn any more. So when the elder was up to his waist in water, he felt completely humiliated and let go of his arrogance. At this point, the novice relented and told him, up to your waist is enough. And from there, the novice started to discourse on the Dhamma, giving the cryptic metaphor. There was a termite mound with 6 entrances. A lizard is inside the termite mound, and the way to catch the lizard is to block 5 entrances and to put your hand through the 6th, and you'll be able to catch the lizard as you wish. The novice didn't need to say anything more than this, because the elder was an experienced teacher, and he immediately knew that the lizard in the teaching is the mind itself, which is constantly thinking of things which are of no benefit, losing its energy via the other 5 sense doors. If we want to train the mind, we have to control the 5 outer senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, and purify the 6th sense, which is the object of the mind. As soon as the elder understood, he immediately trained himself in sensual restraint and purification of the mind. And by the end of the novice's teaching, the elder was an arahant, even standing there in the river up to his waist in water. Because the elder had been artful in knowledge for so long, to become artful in practice was no difficulty for him. All he needed was to have a little nudge in the right direction. Therefore, we can see that to be artful in knowledge is an essential foundation for one's personal development. So we come now to a time in our live stream when we open up to questions sent in by viewers in advance. So the question today comes from Teresa of Los Angeles. So here comes the question. Hi, Venerable, how are you doing in England so far? I hope that you have a good time there. I have a question for you. What's the Buddhist view on assisted suicide? If a patient is terminally ill and is suffering a lot, is it ethical for this patient to seek assisted suicide? Hi, Teresa, and thank you for your topical question. I hope you're not contemplating ending it all or pulling the plug on an elderly relative, but just in case, I have tried not to delay in getting back to you with my answer. Well, there's not much in the Buddhist scriptures directly applicable to medical ethics when considering the Buddhist perspective on medical ethics of assisted dying or euthanasia. Some Westerners consider Buddhists to be indifferent to death or even to be nihilistically valorizing suicide. And this is a misconception which is perpetuated by images of self-immolating Vietnamese monks and disgraced samurai committing seppuku or ritual suicide. Some scriptures even appear to show that the Buddha condones the suicide of enlightened monks, with scriptural stories of the Buddha accepting the deaths of his monks with equanimity and even humor. Furthermore, Buddhist meditation does include such contemplation of the inevitability of death and the stages of the decomposition of a corpse. However, on closer examination, Buddhist scripture and tradition, like most religions, holds that suicide and euthanasia, even when the patient is suffering, are forms of murder. Most commentators agree that the Buddhist tradition has long been opposed to the intentional destruction of life, even when done in acts of suicide. The Buddha himself chastised monks who praised the beauty of death for seriously ill patients. Even though a person may be on their deathbed and in serious pain, as a Buddhist, they would generally prefer to be awake and aware at the moment of death as much as possible, even if they must endure pain in order to have a good death, which means to have a death that has a better afterlife destination. Palliative care, including painkillers to take the edge off a person's end-of-life suffering, are thought to be better ways to go for the patient. And in this connection, appropriately calibrated pain medication can allow for greater focus during terminal care. And there is no necessary reason for a Buddhist to embrace pain even when they can be medicated. There is a growing literature on Buddhist approaches to end-of-life care and counseling exploring these issues from Tibetan, Zen, and Theravada perspectives. The problem otherwise is that even if a person wants to end it all and is exercising their free will, it doesn't prevent the death from being technically a suicide or self-murder. I should clarify that many things Buddhism prohibits are not against the law, but they are against the law of karma, whether it be abortion, smoking cannabis, putting down unwanted pets, or assisted dying. The problem with so-called mercy killing is that if the person dies with a clouded mind, then they will likely be born in a place that is even more suffering than they were trying to escape. Helping a person to die in this way also involves karma by association for the caregiver that helps them to take their own life. So, conclusion, similar to Hinduism, most Buddhists would stress that assisting another's suicide risks accruing bad karma, which would affect their next life after reincarnation, not to speak of the person who decides to end it for themselves. This is why in Buddhism there is a strongly held tradition of the sanctity of life, which points Buddhists away from endorsing or practicing assisting suicide. In order not to end on a depressing note, I have a little bit of internal good news for those of you who are familiar with my personal channel on YouTube. Recently, I've been premiering an previously unreleased series as a big thank you to all my channel subscribers on the occasion of reaching triple figures. So since the 5th of December, so 15 months into launching my channel, the series which I have uploaded, or I'm in the process of uploading, is a remaster of a translation and voiceover of the Dhammakaya Foundation's Mahasutta Soma Jataka, which I gave as an example earlier today of the value of being a learned person. So the videos which I've uploaded are originally made in July 2008, but I've now re-rendered them in full HD and with a 16:9 aspect, with a new copyright-free backing music. So I hope you enjoy these. So for this session, I have introduced blessing number 7, artfulness in knowledge to you. For my next live session online, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning, I move on to the 8th blessing on the subject of artfulness in usage, which explains how to apply the knowledge we have for good in our lives and to be a pathway towards blessings. But for good measure, I would like to remind viewers that you can email your questions about meditation or what you've heard in the lecture to the email address that you can see spelled out in the slide, and I will do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Hopefully, as a result of today's session, for those of you who are students or lifelong learners, you will be a little bit more savvy about how to turn your study habits into a blessing in your life. So for today, this is me, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, signing off for now. So long, folks, and stay safe.